Hi, and welcome to Cooking with Lila and Katie. Today we will be making Supremes de Volaille à Blanc, which is chicken breast poached in butter with wine and cream sauce and champignons farcis, which are stuffed mushrooms.
This is one of Julia Child's famous recipes that she learned to make from her experiences in France.
After reading My Life in France, our nonfiction book by Julia Child, we were inspired to make one of her recipes. To make Supreme de Volaille à Blanc, you will need
lemon juice, chicken, butter, white pepper, salt, wax paper, and a casserole dish. Preheat the oven to 400 degrees. Rub the Supremes with drops of lemon juice. And sprinkle lightly with salt and pepper.
Put the butter in the casserole dish and put it in the oven.
After the butter is bubbling, take it out of the oven.
Roll the chicken in the butter and then cover it with wax paper. Then put the lid on.
Put the chicken in the oven for 8 to 10 minutes.
After 6 minutes, press the tops of the Supremes with your finger. If they are still soft and squishy, return them to the oven for a minute or two more. Remove the Supremes from a hot dish and then cover them and keep them warm while making the sauce.
For the wine and cream sauce, you will need
Parsley, wine, beef broth, whipping cream, white pepper, salt, and lemon juice.
pour the butter from the casserole, the beef stock, and the wine into a pan.
Then pour the cream in and keep boiling.
When it's thick, add white pepper, salt, and lemon juice.
When the sauce is thick, pour it over the chicken.
And sprinkle with parsley.
Bon appetit! To make champignons farcis, you will need
Swiss cheese, parsley, cream, scallions, potato starch, black pepper, sea salt, butter, and mushrooms. Destem the mushrooms. Grate the cheese.
wash and dry the caps. Brush the mushrooms with melted butter.
Season with salt and pepper.
Wash and dry the stems.
Mince the stems.
Sauté the mushroom stems, scallions, and butter. Then add the potato starch.
After 1 minute, pour in heavy cream. When thickened, add parsley, pepper, and salt. Add filling to mushroom caps.
Sprinkle cheese over the mushrooms. Then drizzle butter over the mushrooms. If you have extra mushrooms, top with cheese. Then put the mushrooms in the oven for 15 minutes.
Voila, et bon appetit!
Oh my god.
That's so good.
My Life in France, our nonfiction book, was about how Julia Child learned how to cook in France.
As a person, Julia Child wasn't languorous. In fact, she was quite genial. When Julia first arrived in France, she didn't know a word of French or how to cook a single French dish. Against her father's caveat, Julia left for France with her husband Paul for Paul's job.
Julia had no idea what France was really like. In her book, when she first glimpsed France, she said, "As I gazed through the porthole at the twinkling lights of Le Havre, I realized I had no idea what I was looking at. France was a misty abstraction for me, and a land I had long imagined but I had no real sense of."
Soon she was inspired by all the intricate meals in France, and she enrolled herself in a cooking school. She wanted to hone her abilities and maybe own restaurants someday. After learning the basics of cooking, Julia would go to restaurants and try to replicate dishes. After her teacher, Chef Bernard, recommended cooking at home when she wasn't at school, she began to shop at local markets to buy pots, pans, and fresh ingredients. Sometimes she would spend the whole day wending through the markets.
From this, she began to learn the science of cooking. Julia was very interested in why recipes did or did not work. She mulled over correct proportions and the right baking conditions. She came up with perfect recipes for beurre blanc, bechamel sauce, bouillabaisse, and boeuf bourguignon.
Many years later, Julia wrote a cookbook with her French friends Simca and Luzette. This book was called Mastering the Art of French Cooking. The book became very popular and is still sold today. She kept experimenting with the French recipes for American cooks, especially French bread. French bread had an infamous reputation to fail if it wasn't cooked in a French bread oven. Eventually, Julia figured out a way to make French bread in an American oven with a piece of tile and a spray bottle. Some chefs were iodinastic and girded this idea because they thought French bread could only be made using a French bread oven.
Subsequent to the publishing of her book, Julia starred in a TV series called The French Chef. The show explained how to cook authentic French dishes in your own kitchen. We got the recipe for Supremes de Volaille à Blanc and Champignons Farcis in The French Chef Cookbook, a cookbook about recipes shown on The French Chef.
The French Chef also became very popular, and we used episode numbers 14 and 15 as a guide to make our dishes. By now, Julia was considered a well-known gastronome. Later, Julia wrote Mastering the Art of French Cooking No. 2 with her friend Simca and From Julia Child's Kitchen, a more personal cookbook.
In the end of the book, Julia says, "No one is born a great cook. One learns by doing."
This means that no one is born an expert at something. You have to actually do work to improve. Throughout the book, this message is displayed as Julia learns to cook and appreciate culture.
As Julia said, bon appetit!